All right, guys. So once again, we got to talk about one of the biggest lunatics on the left, Mr. Malcolm Nance, whom, along with Elon Musk, right? MSNBC, for whatever reason, routinely has these people, these clear extremists, right? These clear crackpots on their network to push crackpot and extremist ideas on national television, and then MSNBC turns around and says that they're unbiased and that they are the ones that are pushing responsible rhetoric to the American people, when this guy literally in this interview is calling for war against the quote GOP insurgency. This guy in no uncertain terms is saying that the American people should turn on their neighbors, okay, and treat this like the war in Iraq, in Syria, okay? This is what this guy is saying on TV. But ironically, he's sitting here complaining about the extremism on the right, okay? The extremism in the Republican Party. He's saying that the extremism in the Republican Party is so mainstream that we have to treat this as an insurgency. That's what this guy is saying, okay? Now, imagine if somebody on Fox News, okay, if a right-winger went on Fox News and said the exact same thing about the Democrats, saying we have to go to war with our neighbors, the Democrats, because they become an insurgency, okay? I think that the mainstream liberal media would be shitting bricks, right? I mean, to be quite honest with you, that's what they'd be doing, okay? They will be pointing to that as a clear-cut example of the GOP calling for a civil war, or somebody on the right, or conservatives calling for civil war against Democrats, and this is another attack on democracy. That is what they be saying. However, this guy who allegedly, and I'm using allegedly strong here, went to fight a war in Ukraine, right? Went to fight on behalf of Ukraine, even though this dude is American. Again, crazy crackpot stuff, to be quite honest with you, is on TV calling for the American people to fight each other, okay, over politics. But at the same time, he's trying to lecture people on extremism, right? So I want to respond to this as I sip my morning coffee out of my racist coffee mug, which is a daily reminder of the 2022 definition of racist according to the left, which is basically anybody who disagrees with the Democrat Party. You can grab your mugs at gforemanbcp.com. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video here from Malcolm Nance and respond to this, because again, if this was something that was said on Fox News, people will be freaking out. This is honestly one of the craziest interviews I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, well, you know, as a terrorism expert, I usually remove phrases like Muslim or Christian or Catholic or white. But I'm talking about extremists. Most extremists have an ideology that they're following. But here in the United States, to characterize that, to understand just what kind of terrorism we might be dealing with, you have to actually label it according to as white extremism, because we have 30% of the population of the United States who no longer believe in the democratic norms that were established at the founding of the country.
I don't know, man. I think it might be more than that, right? If that's what you're trying to say about what people on the right believe, then you also have to throw in those people on the left, including mainstream liberal crackpots like this guy, like yourself, who openly push the conspiracy that Russia and Trump worked together, colluded to influence the outcome of the 2016 election, right? Again, these are the same people who, again, told the American people for 4 years straight that Trump was an illegitimately elected president, that are now talking about how, there's a certain part of this country that doesn't believe in democracy. And it's like, well, you guys gave up on democracy, like, what, 6 years ago, right? When Trump was elected, you guys gave up on that a long time ago. You said that this country is not a democracy anymore because Trump was elected, okay? So I don't want to hear anything about this. Again, it's just funny how these people are the pot calling the kettle black. And they're the ones that started it. They started this so-called war on democracy.
Let's just be honest about that. The January 6th uprising was an attempt to overthrow American democracy.
Okay, and again, Maxine Waters and the Democrats trying to contest the election results.
Wish to debate. I wish to ask, is there one United States senator who will join me in this letter
There
of
is no
rejection?
debate. There is no debate.
That's one.
The gentlewoman will suspend the chair.
in 2016, right? You know, the thing that Democrats told us in 2020 was so bad, right? You have blood on your hands if you try to go through what is constitutionally and legally allowed for you to contest an election. Something that, again, Democrats did in 2016. That was an attempt to overthrow democracy. That was an attempt to overthrow democracy. Or the Russia collusion hoax wasn't that, right? It was an attempt to overthrow democracy. I think it was.
And we've now learned from these hearings that Donald Trump intended to go there and march down to the well of the House of Representatives and essentially be crowned as a king. And that shows that American democracy is not just fragile. American democracy is under direct and immediate attack by people who would see 245 years of democratic governance destroyed, not just destroyed, transformed back into the very monarchic style government or totalitarian government that we rebelled against with King George III.
Look, I'm so sick and tired of hearing these people talk about what Trump intended to do, right? They never want to talk about what actually happened, which is that Trump stepped down. Trump stepped down, okay? That's what actually happened. Because if Trump actually really wanted to be a dictator, okay, and if he was actually really serious about that, there's a lot of things that Trump would have did that he just did not do, right? He didn't invoke the Insurrection Act. He didn't attempt a military coup, because that is how you actually do a coup, right? You don't do a coup through rounding up random dudes, right, and having them go to the Capitol unarmed. That's not a coup, okay? A coup is using the military, okay? You have to use the military because they're the ones that have enough force and arms to actually take over a country, okay? He didn't do that. If Trump wanted to stay in office, if he wanted to be a dictator, he could have just refused to leave. He could be like, listen, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay in the White House. You literally have to kill me or drag me out or force me out in order for me to leave. I am not giving up my position. But that's not what he did. He did none of those things. When it became clear that the election stuff was over, he said, okay, I'm done, right? He stepped down and he left. That's not what actual dictators do. That's not what people who are trying to actually do coups do. They don't give up. They fight to the death to maintain power and control. Trump did not do that. But, you know, let's not let facts and reality and what actually happened get in the way of the fear-mongering and the narrative that MSNBC is trying to push on American people, that Trump is some type of existential threat to democracy.
So that being said, American democracy is under siege right now. And having these hearings really brings that out. The problem is about 60% of the American public are not listening or paying attention at all.
Yeah, because it's stupid, right? Because they know what you guys are putting on is just a show. It's a Hollywood production. Nobody cares about this when you have inflation. You got a border crisis. You got a crime crisis. We have crises all across the board, and you guys are still talking about January 6th. Nobody cares. The American people aren't buying into your propaganda. That is what that's telling you. If Trump was such a big threat to democracy, if Trump was so bad, okay, as you guys are making it out to be, people will be paying attention. But see, this is why they come up here and they say this type of stuff. They push this extremism because they're desperate to get people to pay attention to what's going on. But the American people are not stupid. They're not falling for it. These people, these liberals, the Democrat Party, they really do think that their base is stupid, guys. And they show you that every single day. I want people to understand these people think that you're dumb. They do.
And another that 30% we keep talking about, they view all of this as a lessons learned on how to do it correctly next time.
And you call what's happening an insurgency. We've heard that term in foreign wars recently in Iraq. But talk about why you apply the term insurgency to what you see here as a persistent and ongoing threat of these domestic extremists.
Right. Well, I called this on November 6, 2020, when I was on Real Time with Bill Maher. And Bill, to his credit, was trying to say, we have to do kumbaya. We have to bring the Republicans along, try to, convince the Trump voters that, that America needs to reunite. And I took a very pessimistic view towards that, principally because I was reading their forums. I was reading their own intelligence about what they intended to do. And it was pretty clear by that point that they were going to try to either overthrow the government or that they were going to settle in for a long-term series of destabilizing actions using a political party, the Republican Party, as their political basis, and then using violence, threat of violence, and extremism as the way to manifest change in the street, right? So remove politics from the halls of power and change politics through violence on the street. This is called an insurgency.
Okay, so everything he just said there perfectly describes the BLM riots, the Antifa riots, the Roe v. Wade riots / protests that are currently still going on. Everything he just said there describes that. But for whatever reason, let's just focus on January 6th. Let's ignore all the ongoing things that are actually happening right now. The ongoing political violence and extremism happening in this country from the left. Let's ignore that. Let's not talk about that. That's not an insurgency. But this is an insurgency. Now, I want you guys to listen to what he says next and how he defines the key characteristics of what he says is an insurgency.
And the insurrection which happened on January 6th, that was one event. An insurgency is a chain of events.
Okay, so how is it an insurgency? What other event has happened that has been from the right that has followed January 6th? Or that has been an attempt to overturn democracy? And don't give me the whole election integrity bills that are coming from the GOP, because we already know that's false, right? That's been proven false. In Georgia, more minorities than ever voted in the Georgia primary, right? Again, I say this all the time. If the GOP is actually trying to stop black folks from voting, okay, they're trying to keep minorities from voting, they're doing a piss poor, terrible job at it, right? They should stop passing those bills if that is the point of those bills, okay? So give me one example. Where is the ongoing GOP / right-wing conservative insurgency that is happening in this country? Because he just defined an insurgency as an ongoing series of events, right? He just admitted that, well, January 6th was one thing. It was one thing. So by your own definition, it's not an insurgency. However, again, let's ignore the BLM riots, the Antifa riots, the Roe v. Wade riots. Those are ongoing events. Those events have been going on over time. They're still happening to this day. And for whatever reason, let's not talk about it. That's not an insurgency. We're not going to even, discuss that at all. We're not, that extremism, that's not an existential threat to this country. But a one-time event, January 6th is. A failed event, okay? Failed. And again, they act like Trump is some type of ongoing threat when it's like, you don't have any evidence to back it up. Because like I said, if Trump really wanted to be king, right? He didn't do what he had to do to actually become a king, right? He wasn't going to put his life on the line for it. He wasn't going to risk dying over it. He stepped down, which means he really didn't want to be king. Okay, not bad enough to be an actual threat. And I don't think that if Trump was elected in 2024, like these guys are trying to push, because this is what they're essentially trying to say here, is that if Trump is elected in 2024, he's not going to leave office. And again, they don't have any proof to back up that claim. He left in 2020. If he was elected in 2024, I think he would know that, okay, I only got 4 years. I really think that Trump just wants to serve 8 years. That's it. He wants to serve 8 years. After, 2028, he's going to step down. He'll be 80 plus years old. I think he just wanted to say, I served the maximum term that I could serve as president, and that's it. That's it. I don't think he's going to just try to stay in office. Why would he try to do that? What's the point? He's 80 plus years old. There will be no point. But again, these guys are trying to push, the idea that Trump is some type of ongoing threat when, where's the evidence? Where's the proof? You can't point to the GOP election bills. They don't work. In regards to what you say they're for, which is to suppress the minority votes, they don't work. We know that for a fact. Trump's rhetoric is, again, he knows that he can't run again. Constitutionally, he can't run again after 2024 if he wins. So where's the threat? Where's the actual threat?
And it's common knowledge. A year and a half ago when I was calling this an insurgency, people were actually saying that's crazy. This is not an insurgency.
Yeah, because it's not. By your own definition, it's not an insurgency.
This is not like Iraq. This is not like Libya. It's not like Syria. Well, it is. And it's well on its way. It's closer to the beginnings of the Irish Republican Army. Irish Republicanism, where now the Republican Party is Sinn Féin. And it's just a matter of seeing who comes up as the provisional Irish Republicans in this story and starts carrying out acts of violence in order to effect change.
Which is exactly what the left is doing. That's exactly what the left is doing. Let's see who starts carrying out acts of violence to affect political change. That is literally exactly what they've been doing since 2020, since George Floyd. And even before that, that's what they were doing, okay? But it didn't really ratchet up to the level it is today until 2020. No mention of that whatsoever. Republicans are the threat, though. You notice how he doesn't just keep it at Trump supporters or right-wing extremists. No, he says Republicans to make it sound, no, your mainstream Republican is a existential threat. That is what this guy is pushing.
So we are well on to our way to a multi-year campaign. That we're already 2 years into this campaign where may have to fight the they in my title. And the they in my title who want to kill Americans are your neighbors.
Wow. Wow, he said it.
That is a very scary thought, but it is a very important conversation to have given the fact that we are post-insurrection, as we've been saying all show long. My good friend, Malcolm Nance, it was great to see you.
This is insane. Again, can you imagine, guys, if somebody went on Fox News and said, we may have to fight our fellow Americans because the insurgency, they want to kill Americans. So we have to fight them like this is the war in Iraq or Syria. Again, I think Fox News, if somebody really said that, I don't think Fox News would have them back on as a guest. I think they would look at it and say, hey, you know what, that might be a little bit too extreme, right? That might be out of bounds. But this is what is routinely said on mainstream liberal outlets like MSNBC by guys like him, crackpots like him, Eli Mastal, Joy Reid. I mean, this is mainstream liberal media rhetoric. But they're trying to say, oh, no, they want a civil war. They want a civil war. They're the extremists. We're not the extremists. Even though we're openly calling for war against them, we're not the extremists. Even though our side is openly using political violence to try to affect political change, we're not the extremists. Everybody else is extremists. Again, it blows my mind, right? It really does. Yeah, I mean, these guys are lunatics, right? They've lost it. They've absolutely lost it. They are desperate to try to get people to care about January 6th and Trump, but it's just not working because I don't think the American people are this dumb, and they're not going to fall for this type of fear-mongering. Again, the same thing they accuse Fox News of doing. I mean, this is just... I don't know how you justify having this guy on TV saying stuff like this. I don't get it. I don't understand. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.